Hi, I'm Danielle with Stitch and Designs. Welcome back to my channel. For today's tutorial, I have another Pimp My Bag series, and this is so cute. So let me just start off by saying I really don't know anything about anime. I'm learning. I'm trying to learn. I'm learning different shows and characters, but I still don't know well enough. But I can't help it. This one's so adorable. It's so cute, and look, it's got little ears. Like, she's so cute. So this is the Mav pack at 120%. The cut and sew is done by K&A Custom Fabric and Hardware. They also have coordinating zipper pulls for this one as well. In the tutorial, I talk about a few different options that you can do for this bag. I'm show you, because this is the one that I did. This is my first one where I did minimal. It's only a couple pieces less, but it's attached right here at the top, so you can't unhook it. But this side has a swivel clasp, so then you can switch sides if you wanted to have two D-rings. You could have just the one side if you wanted to. But in the one that I show you in the actual video, but I also do show you how to do the strap per the pattern. So I do show you that part, and then I kind of go over this one. But the main one in the tutorial, I actually show you how to do a traditional backpack. So if you have somebody in your life that's really not a huge sling person, but they still want a cute little backpack, which this is a great size for kids and adults because it's at the 120, and it works great for a backpack. You just need to adjust your strap length if you're doing a child, or if you're doing an adult. Adult, of course, go a little bit bigger. I did mine at 46 inches. I'm 6'1". So because it is a smaller backpack, you need this longer straps than a traditional backpack, where if you're for kids, you could get away with maybe, I don't want to give a length because every kid's a little different, but either way, they're stinking adorable. Like, look at these. And then of course we do binding in this method. And then I also, it's kind of hard to see, but there is a zipper pocket back here, and there's a slip pocket. And then also, if you wanted to, you could put the slip pocket up against the front instead of having it be zipper and slip pocket right on top of each other. Totally your preference on that one. But these are absolutely adorable. So I hope you guys enjoy this tutorial, and I'll stop rambling so we can get right to it. Bye. So when you get your bag, it's going to come looking like this. So you can lift those off. And so this bag only comes in the pebbled vinyl option. So everything will be laid out like so. And then you have your lining fabric. And then these are the cute little ears that go on top of the bag. So just to walk around and show you what everything is. So these are the straps if you're going to be doing these straps per the pattern. So I'll show you how to do the straps, but I'll also show you another way to be able to use less hardware. And then you can also do this because it is at 120%. You can't do this as a normal backpack if you don't want to do it as a sling. So I'll also show you that option as well. These are for the top part that goes onto the bag to be able to do the sling bag option. This is for, we're going to cut this in half, and it's for to be able to have the D-rings attached. We don't necessarily need these little pieces. This is our gusset. And then these are also parts for our D-ring as well. In our lining fabric, we have our gusset. Ooh, I think I missed something. Oh, yep, I did. This is for the zipper to be able to go around the top. So the zipper gusset. So we have our gusset, zipper gusset, our pockets. And so in this one, I am going to be doing one of them like I did in the first one, and it's kind of hard to see on the inside. I did a slip pocket and a zipper pocket on the back. So one of these I will use, so probably maybe this one as my slip pocket and this one as my zipper pocket. So then if I do that option, or if you decide to do that option as well as myself, you'll need to cut two other, like you can do black, you can do gray, you could, if you have this like coral color, that'd be really pretty to have on the inside of it to add like an extra little pop of color. So then you would just need two of those in the same size as these little pieces. And then these are also for our lining. So you're also going to need to cut binding. So I chose to do black binding on mine, and I cut mine about 1.25 inches wide. I like to cut mine a little on the wider side, just so that way when I do attach it on there and I sew it, I'm making sure that I can hit the back side, and I'm making sure that I can get both of them done. Because sometimes if you cut it at 1 inch and if it kind of like moves on you, sometimes you can miss the back side because you can't see where it is exactly. So if you miss it, it's always a bummer. Then you have to go back in, fold it back down, and then you have another row of stitching. And depending on what you're working with, you don't necessarily like the looks of it. I kind of don't like the looks of it when I miss it. So I just cut mine a little wider. That way I make sure I don't miss it. And then I just trim it off at the end. And then it just looks really nice because then it's all trimmed and looks really pretty. And so these pieces, if you were going to be doing the pocket like you would in the pattern, that's where these pieces would come, because they'd be the tabs. But because we're doing binding on this one instead of doing the birthing method like the pattern does, it's easier to not use these and just put in the zipper like you would in most other patterns. And then in here, like I said earlier, these are the little ear pieces. So you just cut these out, and then they go back to back. So you can go ahead and cut these out, and then you can either put interfacing on the whole, like iron this out and put interfacing on this whole piece and then cut them out, or you can iron it because you want to make sure that they lay flat when you cut them out and everything. And then you can cut out the individual pieces and then interface the individual pieces. That is completely your preference. And then once you have these cut out, just lay them down next to, or lay these pieces on top of the other ones just to verify that they are the same size, because sometimes the linings, even though they're given the exact size, they can come printed a little wonky. So just verify. I'll be doing that, so I'll show you how to do that, or how I do it. And then that way you just make sure, especially on the gusset, because one time I didn't check the gusset and I sewed it all through thinking it was like, oh, it's totally fine, not even paying attention to it. The lining was like so much bigger, so I'm putting it together and I'm just looking at this and the lining is just like sitting there sagging. I'm like, this doesn't look right. So always verify. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut all these pieces up. Okay, now that all your pieces are cut out, let's go ahead and verify the sizes. So I'm working on my gusset right now. So I'm just lining up one side of it, and we are a little long. So go ahead and trim that off. We can set that aside. Then our zipper gusset, same deal. I'll line up one side. It doesn't matter if it's a little bit wider, that's okay. It's just you want to just make sure that your length are the same. And then your lining pieces, as long as if it's bigger, totally fine, because you can trim it off once you baste them together. You just want to make sure that it's not too much smaller. So mine's just a tiny bit bigger all the way around on this one. Totally fine. And then it appears this one is also a tiny bit bigger all the way around. Again, totally okay. I can trim that off later. Then this stuff is all part of just the exteriors. And then you saw me in the time lapse, you saw me cut out 2 more pieces. So now I will have a backing to my slip pocket, which I think I'm going to do this one as my slip pocket, and then this one as my zipper pocket. So when you open the zipper, you'll see like the faces. So it's kind of like a little spooky spy. They're spying on you in your pocket. So I got those pieces cut out. I don't need this one, but if you do not have, oh, I forgot to cut this out, of course. So if you don't have the pattern printed out at 120%, that's totally fine. I'm going to show you how you can cut out your own stabilizer if you do not have that. So what we would do is lay out your main, so it's easier if you put it face down, because if you're marking it with a pin and you accidentally miss, you don't want to accidentally mark the front of your material. So put your material face down, and then you're going to draw. Oh, there's my pen. I'm like, where's my pen? You're going to draw or trace your pattern piece, or not your pattern. Well, yeah, your pattern piece. See, good thing I marked my own back. Yeah. Even though that little mark would have been on the edge and it would have been in my seam allowance, but I still didn't want to mark my front. Anyway, so now that you have your exterior traced out, and I'm like, words for me today are just not happening. So I have the exterior traced out. What I want to do is use a ruler, and you want to make it at least a 1/4 inch smaller. So if you did 3/8 of an inch smaller, between 3/8 and 1/2 an inch, because you want to make sure that, especially if you're using this on a domestic machine, even though this is Decoville, I'm using Decoville Light, you really don't want to have to sew over this in your seam allowance when you put your binding on. So at minimum of 3/8 of an inch smaller for your stabilizer. I'm like, again, words. 1/2 inch is a little bit better. So whatever one you decide to do, 3/8 or 1/2 inch. So I'm just marking that straight away. So once you get all of your main, once you have your the straight sides marked, you're just gonna, you can either use your ruler to make little, so it's easier to stand it up, make little tick marks at the same distance as you go around, or you can just kind of eyeball it and then just make your curves. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's just stabilizer. You're not going to see it. So then the smaller line is what you would cut out. And then if you don't have this printed at 120 and you do the tracing part, once you have one traced, grab a piece of paper, trace your new stabilizer piece onto your paper. So that way, if you're continuing to do these awesome bags from K&A, and they do offer the 100%, sometimes they're just in 120%, but if you have your stabilizer traced out at 120% and then just put it in with your instructions and all your other pattern pieces, and just make sure you mark it, that way you're not having to trace and do this whole process again and again each time that you do it. You already have it printed out, so then just saves you a little bit of time. So once you get this piece cut out, you're going to use that template piece then to create your second one. And then you will also cut out your pieces for your gusset and zipper gusset. So I have my 2 pieces for the exterior here. And let me grab the zipper gusset and the gusset. So these ones are a little bit easier. So then you just grab a long ruler and then you just measure the length. You measure the width, make it an inch shorter in the length and an inch narrower, because then it will take in, so it'll be a 1/2 inch on each side. So for mine, this is what mine will look like once I get it fused on there. And then you do the same thing for your zipper gusset. Measure your length and then measure your width and then just cut it an inch, or I think this one I pretty much kept it almost the same length. Yeah, it's pretty much the same length on this one, but I cut it an inch narrower, so then I have my distance on each side. So it would give you, it'd be better if you did for the exteriors, use a 1/2 inch one. Instead of the 3/8, use a 1/2 inch, because it'll just give you better distance for when you go to turn it, and then you don't have that stiffness when you do turn the bag out and you're trying to poke out the edges to make it look really pretty. If you do the 3/8, I think it would just be a little bit too tight and it'd be a little stiff in that corner or along the edges. So do a 1/2 inch around the whole thing, because I believe if you did print the pattern pieces out, I believe it would be a 1/2 inch difference all the way around. All right, so then once you get all of those cut out, you're going to go ahead and interface with, I'm using SF101 on my cotton woven pieces, and then all my exterior pieces, the main exterior, the gusset, and the zipper gusset are the only ones of my exterior pieces that are going to be getting the Decoville light. Before we get started, I wanted to go over all the pieces one more time, and then I'm going to start with the different strap options. So these are the ears, so I have them cut out, and so you're going to just line them up with the wrong sides. You'll put them together, and then you'll sew around them, and that will be able to give you, as you can see here. And you are able, if you wanted to, you could edge paint these prior to putting them into your bag, so that is an option. I just did not edge coat them on mine. So you should have 2 ears. This is the piece for the D-rings. This piece gets cut in half, which I'm going to cut in half right now. And this piece is optional. I'll explain more when we get to it, but just know if you're doing a domestic machine, this piece is optional, and I'll explain why. These are the fun decorative pieces for if you're doing the strap like you are, like per the pattern. This is the top piece that, as you can see right here, that goes right there. I have my 2 pocket pieces. If you only wanted to do a zipper pocket, then just have those 2 pieces. If you want to do a slip pocket and a zipper pocket, I cut 2 extra the same size. So one will be for my zipper pocket, one will be for my slip pocket, and my slip pocket piece, I'll have to just use a larger seam allowance for that one. So no big deal. I have my gusset, my zipper gusset, so those are my exteriors, and both of those have Decoville light on them. I have my main 2 exterior pieces, my back and my front. Both of those with Decoville light. I have my lining pieces, both of them, and they're interfaced with SF101. And then I have my lining for my gusset, which I've already trimmed down to size, and then also for my zipper gusset. And then you guys saw me trimming those down prior. So there's all of those pieces. Other things that you're going to be needing are, you'll need some binding. I am using a waterproof canvas for my binding. You can use already pre-made bias tape if you wanted to, or you can make your own bias tape. It is completely optional. There are other like stick options where you fold it over and it sticks, so then you don't have to clip it. Well, you can clip it just to kind of make sure, but you don't need as many clips to hold on to. So there's that option for binding. You'll need webbing, zipper tape. I'm using the coordinating zipper pulls for the Spy Family bag. So this is what they look like. So I have 2 of those. You can use just 1 zipper pull, but 2 is also another very nice option. If you want to do a zipper pocket on the inside, I am just using a pre-made zipper tape. This one is 9 inches. You can use zipper by the yard. And then if you did zipper by the yard, you would just need an additional, or either a 3rd zipper pull if you're going to do 2 on the outside, or 1 on the outside, 1 on the inside. Totally your option. You will also need hardware. So if you're going to do the strap per the instructions, you'll need 2 swivel clasps, 2 D-rings, and 1 slide adjuster. If you want to do the hardware like I did in this one, where I'm using minimal hardware or less hardware, okay, I only used 1 swivel clasp, 2 D-rings, and 1 slide adjuster, so only 1 minor, because I did a option of a D-ring on both sides. If you only wanted to have it on one side, then you would only need 1 D-ring. If you want to do a traditional backpack, you would need 2 slide adjusters and 2 D-rings, so you wouldn't need the swivel clasps at all. Okay, so those are the different options for the hardware. And then of course, if you have a label, I put my label on the back because I totally forgot to put it on when I did, and I realized, and I was like, oh, I need my label. So there's my label. So if you have labels, make sure to grab your label. And that, I believe, is all the pieces. Okay, let's get working on straps. All right, for the strap, if you're going to be doing this per the instructions, it tells you the amount of webbing that you're going to be needing for that. Let me grab all of my, as I set everything aside. Okay, so you'll need to grab your 2 pieces. And as I'm looking at this, I did a horrible job cutting this. Definitely a lot more obvious to see the white that I missed in cutting now. Oh man. Oh well, I'll probably still mess something up and have to cut more. Okay, for these, you have the one that will clip up to the top of the D-ring. So for that one, we will grab 1 swivel clasp. I like to start by, just to help kind of like reinforce it. So I would stitch right along here to reinforce that. I'm gonna use my long clips. Oh, and they match. Okay. Oh, probably won't be able to keep that there, but for now. All right, so I have this sewn across here, so that way when if I'm pulling and I'm tugging, it's locked in, it's sewn in here, it has really good strength. Because if you just have it sewn to where, I'm gonna leave that there and just demo with my extra piece. If you just have it to where only a little bit is sewn in there, you're relying on that stitching there, or even if you have it in further and you just have it stitched right here, and even if you do put the rivets in there, yes, the rivets will really help hold it, but because you have this really pretty design on here, it's a lot harder to put the rivets in because that's pretty. You don't want to put a rivet through that. So if you just sew right here, you're only relying on that little bit of stitching right there to hold, and if somebody grabs it, or you have kids, or you put too much weight into it, like, just to be on the safe side, I'm gonna reinforce it. So I'm gonna fold it over. I would sew it right there. Bring your little decorative piece up through. And the reason I'm not sewing it down is because I'm going to do a different method for mine. I'm not going to use these guys. Right. And once you get your little decorative piece on, and then you get it lined up in the middle, you could go around and sew this down. You could start from this corner here, go down, and then follow it all the way into end right here. And then that way, like, that's going to be a really strong little attachment piece right there. So we have that part right there. We would then slide this piece on, and then you could slide on your D-ring. Another option, instead of using a D-ring, if you used a rectangle, let me grab a rectangle out to show you. If you used a rectangle, and then when you put it back, it just leaves it nice, because then you're going to have another piece that's going to go down for the other one. It just makes it look, and then it has it, the webbing on both sides is nice and flat. If you used a D-ring, and it really doesn't matter which piece you use, both of them will work. It just depends on the look you're wanting to go for. So it gives, if it's relaxed, you don't really notice it. And then when you pull it, see how if I put some tension on it, you get that little swoop in the webbing. But it's really not a big deal. So if you don't have any rectangles, a D-ring will totally work. So either one. So I'm going to pull that off for the moment. So when you're adding in your slide adjuster, I have my top of this piece is facing up. I slid it down to where my slide adjuster is, the correct side is on top. And then, oh, now I have it spun to where the swivel, or the swoop part, the D part of the D-ring is going that way. Then grab some slack. You're going to, so this is what it looks like from the side. So there's my little slide bar right there. I'm going to take the end of my webbing. I'm going to go up on this side of the slide bar, so you can see it coming up. Push the slide bar to this side. You're going to grab the end of this piece, and you're going to turn it, and you're going to have it come down on the opposite side of the slide bar. So this is what it looks like. So the slide bar is in between these two pieces right here. So this is independent of these ones. So you can see all the pieces. So then you make some slack in this side, fold. So I'm grabbing this part and I'm pulling it back against it. So then I'm leaving these two pieces on this side, and I'm pulling the outer two pieces this direction. So then at this point, what I normally do is I just sew a line across here, and I just go back and forth a couple times. If you wanted to sew a box, you could pull more of this and you could sew a little box. If you wanted to only put a rivet, you could put a rivet in there, or a couple rivets would probably be better. So it is really your choice on how you finish this off. So for myself, I'm just going to throw a clip in there because, like I said, I'm not doing it this way. For mine, you would then grab a second small piece of webbing, slide it through the other end of the D-ring, and because I like to have mine reinforced, I don't think this piece is going to be long enough. So I'm just using, this is definitely longer than what it needs to be. So I'm just going to slide that in there. Slide my swivel clasp in. And so I'm going to push these to where that they will meet together. So they're the meeting part is underneath my thumb. So bad color choice, it's using black, but it was my smallest piece of extra piece of webbing. So they are butted up together, and they're going to be close to my slide adjuster. So if those were and then I would sew down one side and sew down the other, so I can make like a little box, sew down one, come down, and then sew back up, and then go a little bit over. So I sew a little box. So it holds everything in place. Throw some clips on there. Then I grab my other piece, and because this side is up, I want to make sure that this pretty piece is up through your swivel clasp, and then fold that on top. Make sure to line up your webbing with the bottom part of here. Make sure everything's held. And then at this point, you would just sew down this side and then follow the edges and then end over here. And then because you already sewed the webbing together and it's now being covered up by this piece, this part is reinforced and is nice and strong. And you definitely don't need it as long as the piece that I have in front of me. It will have the length listed into the instructions, but this is how you make the strap per the instructions. So then you can, so this is what it would look like, well, minus all the clips. So that is one option. And let me disassemble this one. If you want to do where you use a little less hardware, you could do it like this one. So inside of this piece, how you would normally sew in a little bit of the webbing, and you'd have your D-ring up here for your swivel clasp to attach, which would be the strap that we just made. Instead of having that little piece with the D-ring, you would attach your end of your webbing directly into this, and then you could have your slide adjuster, and then on the other end you would just have one swivel clasp, and then you can have it to where it's fixed onto one side, so then you'd only need one D-ring. If you wanted to make it to where you could swap to either side, then you would have two D-rings like I have right now. So there's that option. So use a little one piece less hardware. And so the option that I'm going to do, I'm not going to use my swivel clasps. I'm actually going to make this into more of a traditional backpack. So then I don't need these pieces. For that option, I can also use another piece of webbing, a small piece. And I can make a little handle here at the top. So I wouldn't be using this piece either. So I'm just going to show you real quick. So if this was going to be the little piece, you'd put them just like the instructions, right sides together. And if you were using, I'm just going to borrow this little piece. If you're going to be using the little strap like it is in the instructions, you'd put the D-ring and the pieces of webbing in there centered, and then you'd sew along here, and then when you turn it out, then you'd have your little piece of webbing sticking out. And that's just like the instructions say. If you were going to do it to where it was like this one, you would just grab the piece of your long one, put in there to where you have just a little bit that sticks out. Similar concept of using the D-ring one. You'd sew around, and then you'd turn it out, and then top stitch it, and then it'd already be attached in there. Okay, so we'll just say that this is all sewn together. I know, sorry for all the hypotheticals. If you're unsure and you're a little confused on my previous math pack bags, you can always go back, and so using this option, I do in, oh, which video is it? I can't remember. I think it's I think I do it in almost all of them. But you could always go back and check those other ones if you get stuck on this option. So we're pretending that this is sewn in and it's top stitched and everything to look like this one. So it doesn't matter which side is facing up because it's the same on either side. So then you'd grab your slide adjuster, throw one on, go up and over the swivel clasp, then grab one of your slide adjusters, slide that on, or not slide adjuster, swivel clasp, and then just like we did with the previous one, finishing this off, it's a little different because I have this instead of the D-ring, but the process is the same. So you go up on this side of the slide adjuster. Now I'm pushing the slide out of the way, grab the end and go up and over. So then again, the bar is in between the pieces of webbing, so it's independent. So then I'm going to grab this piece, pulling the slack through, and push it up and over. So then I have my middle two pieces, and then my outer two pieces. And then you would sew across here. You could do a box, do a couple rivets, your choice on how you want to finish that off. But that would complete the more minimal hardware option. And then you would just put in your D-ring on the side when we get to that part. So there's that one. And so I'm doing the backpack option. So I don't need those. So I need 2 slide adjusters. I don't need this. What else do I need? What do and don't I need? Okay, So I need these pieces. If I wanted to put in a grab handle here at the top, I would just need a small piece of webbing. So about 7 inches would do for a handle. So you could do pink. I think I'm going to use this coral. So I'm going to cut my strap. So I did cut mine to 7 inches. And make sure to melt your ends. Right, then we grab our exterior back. Not to confuse everybody, there is a hack option, which I've seen and I've done it before on some bags. It's a little bit restricting because we do have the Spy Family design at the bottom of the bag. If this wasn't at the bottom and it was like in the middle, you could put a piece of webbing across and then just put a D-ring in between, and then the D-ring would be able to slide. So if you wanted to have it, it'd be a little high here because then it would sit a little high. You'd want it to be lower in the bag, and so it would go right across the top of that. So unfortunately, that's not really an option for this bag design, but for other MAV packs that you wanted to do, that is an option. So it's a fun little hack. So I'm going to find the center of my bag. So I'm lining up my curves, and so kind of like that flat top, I'm just lining up the little points right there, and then making a small little snip, and then lining up my bottom. And then I want to take my straps. For my strap length, I cut them to 46 inches. Normally I would cut a backpack straps to 36 inches, but because this is a smaller, more of a mini backpack, I went with a larger or longer strap length to be able to make it easier to be able to use. And then as reference, I am 6'1", and I find that the longer length is more comfortable with the smaller backpacks. And then so I have it centered so my points are meeting, and so they're slightly angled into the middle. Then I'm going to clip my little grab handle here, and it's clipped on either side. So this is what it looks like. So I have my grab handle, strap, grab handle. And so what you want to go do now is baste these all on. And then flip it over, and then you're going to have a little bit of excess because I angled the straps in. So you're just going to go ahead and trim off that excess. Oh, there it is. And then make sure you remelt those ends. All right, so those are in place and is ready to go. So this would kind of be a little bit bigger than like a mini backpack, but still a very nice option, especially if you have people in your life that aren't really hip on the sling style. They'd rather have a more traditional style backpack. This is that option for them. So if you are doing an industrial machine, you can utilize this piece. We were going to go ahead and find the center of this. Mark your center. So this piece is 2 inches wide, so then when you fold it over and you meet the edges to the middle, it will be then 1 inch wide, so it works with 1 inch hardware. If you're doing 2 inch wide, I don't know. I don't know how wide it would be. That's math. I don't want to math right now. If you are doing this on a domestic machine, because this bag comes in the pebbled vinyl, and then you have more pebbled vinyl, and then you're gonna have your lining and then your binding. And so just to help reduce bulk and be nice to your machine, cut a piece of cotton woven. Cut it in black or the coral color, your choice of it. You could also do it in gray, because this is mainly gray. And then cut it to the same, so 2 inches wide, and they need to be, each piece needs to be between 3 and 4 inches long. So your choice on the length on that one. This guy is, so this would make my pieces 3 inches long for each side. So just use cotton woven, do the exact same steps that I'm going to be doing right now, but just use cotton woven for this instead. Be nice to your machine. It'll be a little bit easier reducing the bulk. And then if you are going to interface it with SF101 to help it, just make sure that you keep it out of your the SF101 out of your seam allowances for when it's going to be sewn in here. That will also help reduce your bulk as well. And especially for your lining, keeping the SF101 out of your lining seam allowances for this, just like I did with my Decoville light. So keep the SF101 out of it for the lining. That will also help reduce your bulk. So grab your edges. You're going to fold it and meet it into the middle. If you want to put a piece of double-sided stick tape down the middle and then fold your edges in, you could totally do that. I'm going to be lazy. So I am just sewing this down. I do about a quarter, I do 1/4 inch seam allowance. You could do an 1/8 inch. Totally your preference on this one. My machine has an easier time grabbing it at the using a 1/4 inch than the 1/8. So up one side or down one side, go sew across, and then down the other side. And then at this point, you can just turn it and cut it in half. And then grab your D-ring, slide that on. I'm just going to throw a clip on there just to help hold it in half. And so you can see how thick that is. That's a lot of layers of vinyl. That is very bulky. I barely like using these for my words. I barely like using these on my machine. So normally for mine, when I do bags, I do cotton woven for these guys. I just like to be nice to my machine. So at this point, then you're gonna kind of go towards the bottom, and I'm angling them in. So I'll hold it up so it's a little bit easier to see. So I'm not quite down. I don't want to be down in the corner, because doing corners are already, can be a little tricky doing the corners already. So, but I want to go just above the corner, and I'm angling in. So I have this bottom part right here along the edge here. And so that way it's angling, gives me a nice good angle up. So then I take the clip and then transfer. So now I'm holding on to my exterior. And then to make sure that you're doing it in the same spot, you can slightly, you don't want to crease fold it in half, but just bend it in half, and then you can line up. So they're stacked on top of each other. So then that way I know where they need to go. So I'm dropping my first one, I'm holding this one, and then my corner is lined up with my edge, and then I'm going to transfer my clip. So then just to verify, putting them back together, and they are lined up. So that way when I hold them up and look, they are even. And then go ahead and then baste those pieces on. So this finishes adding on all of the pieces for the back. I normally wait till the very end to add my slide adjusters and put the back completely together. So for now, I can set this aside. I don't need to do anything to my front. Oh. Except for I will show you guys those. All right, for these guys, for the ears. So I will need, I lied, I need my front because I need to add the ears. Okay, for the front of your bag, you're gonna grab your ears, grab some double-sided stick tape because it'll make life a little bit easier. Oh, I'm out. Well, I'm out of the wide stuff. So just adding kind of in the middle so that way I avoid sewing through it in my seam allowances. Peel the paper off. There we go. And then you're going to do your best to try to line up your edges to the best of your ability. And if you're a little over on one side versus the other, you can always go through and then once you sew your edges together, you can trim it off. It's really not a big deal. Just going to throw some clippies on there. And then you're going to do the same thing to this one. So I'm just going to do it on this one. So you're going to go through and then on one side, whichever side is the slightly bigger one is the side that you're going to have facing down, because this side right here is a little on the smaller side than the one back here. So I want to make sure I sew on this side so that way I make sure I catch that, because if I sewed it on this side, even though I'm going to be sewing at 1/8 of an inch, that's going to be right on this edge right here. So I want to make sure that I catch it. So I'm going to sew big side down. And then just sew around it at 1/8 of an inch. From a note from me, it's better to start down here along this curve rather than on the sides, because this right here will get sucked into the seam allowance. So even if your start and stops aren't quite the prettiest and they don't quite match up, no one's going to see it because this will be in the seam allowance. And then it's going to heat seal those ends. All right, and so I can definitely see that I have some stuff that sticks out along the edge a little bit right there. So now I get to go around and grab my scissors and I'm going to clean up my edges. And it's not as important to clean up the edge right here along the bottom because, again, like I said, it's going to be in your seam allowance. You mainly want to stick to the parts along the ears and make sure that you flip it over and you are trimming and lining, getting everything lined up from both sides. And once it's all done, should be nice and pretty and look like so. And then go ahead and do those exact same steps to this one. So something I just realized that I forgot to demonstrate, and this part is just like in the instructions. So if to be able to do the back part down here, this is where instead of having these little D-ring, instead of having the D-ring sewn directly into the bag like this part technically gets sewn into here. And then you sew this, and then you turn it out, and then you top stitch it, and then this gets sewn into the corner or into the side of the bag like so, and then your D-ring sticks out here. I personally don't, that's not my favorite thing in the entire world. So again, these are your bags. You can sew it together however you want. If you want to do the vinyl, just a tab like that. If you want to do it like this, if you want to do a backpack, if you want to do the strap like the instructions, if you want to do it this way, if you want to do it like a backpack, it is totally your option and you're totally up to you. And that's the nice part about this. You can do it however you choose. So I just realized I forgot to point those out to you guys. All right, now that I have both of my ears done, you want to make sure that you have them in opposite directions. So if you have two that looks like this, all you have to do is just flip one around, so that way you have them in opposites. And so that's not quite the prettiest, but I'm not worried about it because it's going to be in the seam allowance. Now we get to figure out where we want to place them on the character's head. So I'm a-tinking. So we have these like little flat spots, like the point right here where this part is flat, where normally this piece right here goes, as you can see back here. So that's where that normally lines up, is right there. So that's kind of like a nice indicator for this part, because this part is the top that goes towards the top of the head. This part naturally curves, so it curves into the side of the head, or into the side of the bag. That's a nice point to where we have this and that top point right there lining up together. So if I hold it up so you can see the point right there, this would line up like so, and looks mighty pretty. So the bad thing is you have to sew it like this to be able to do it. And that curve, you can't clip that. It's gonna be one of those things, you can't clip it. So here's the fun part. And it works, believe me. It sounds intimidating, it sounds scary, but it is very doable. I did it. It's right here. So I'm showing you exactly how I did it. So I'm lining up this, again, this point with my point up here. That's my start point. And then I'm lining up my edge along with the edge of the bag exterior as well. And we're only sewing this on at 1/8 of an inch. So make sure you back stitch so everything holds on in place. And then I'm just kind of going to where I can't see the edge of the bag right here anymore, because this curve kicks out this way, so I can't see the edge of my bag. And let me zoom you guys in so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so as I'm going to lift my foot, my needle is down. That's the most important thing. Keep that needle down. I'm going to kind of turn and I'm kind of manipulating my little earpiece so that I keep my edge in line with the edge of that bag. So you can see this coral peach color is my exterior, and the gold is the ear. So I'm just going to do a couple stitches and pause, reline up, couple stitches, rotate, realign, and you just keep doing that until you get to the edge. And I know that doesn't really look like much, and it kind of got beat up a little bit, but that's what it's going to look like. And then when you sew it all together, and then when you get it put together, it's going to curve up like so. Okay, so I'm going to zoom you guys back out. And then you do the exact same process for this one on the other side. Again, lining this point with that edge. Oop. So I'm just going to have to kind of I'm going to hold that clip so I know where it ends. So it's going to be hard because I can't really do it from this direction. It's a lot harder to see my ear. So I have that lined up. I have it clipped so that way I know that's where my start point is on the bottom. So that's the side that I need to start with on this side. I know it's a little confusing and it kind of be scary, but you'll be okay. It'll be fine. So now I just pivot that, and I'm doing the exact same thing. I'm just, instead of working from the top, I'm working from the bottom. So a couple stitches, I can't see my bag anymore. Now you turn. And then sometimes if you pick this up and you kind of put like a bend into it, it'll help bend that around like so. So I'm pinching here, and it's giving me that bend. Let me zoom in for you guys. So what I did, so this is what it was looking like, and I was just trying to push it over, and it naturally wants to come up like that. So if you just help it, give it a pinch. It's gonna bring that curve right up, and just like so, and then kind of flatten that out. And you just follow the curve. And that's it. So that's the most difficult thing in this option for the Mav, for the Pimp My Bag series. Let me zoom back out now for you guys. There we go. So that was the hardest part. So that was the most that's the fun feature of the bag, is to add these pieces that stick out, and so it adds extra depth into it. As my straps around the edge. So now you can see my ears look the same. And again, if you wanted to do this prior to, you can edge coat this if you want to. Totally optional on the edge coating piece. All right, now I can actually set my front aside, and now we can go work on our interior. So we only need to work on one of our interior pieces. We don't need our other one. So I'm just gonna go ahead and find my center bottom. Set that over there, and I'm going to grab my pocket pieces. So I'm going to use this piece as my slip pocket. This will be the lining of my slip pocket, and then these will be my zipper pocket. So this is the piece that I want to draw my box for the zipper pocket, because that's going to be the side that goes right. So if I had this put together, this piece would be right up against here. So then when you opened the zipper, so we're playing imaginary, this would be what I would see. So I do not want to draw on that piece. I want to draw on this one. So I'm going to find the center of this one. I'm going to take my ruler and a marking pen, or we're just using a pen. And I'm finding this and lining up the center with one of my numbers on my ruler. I am doing an inch down. And I'm going to be drawing a, let's see how long that is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm drawing a 6-inch long line. And then I'm going to take, if you are doing a pre-made zipper, so a number 3 zipper, you're going to use 3/8 of an inch. If you're using zipper by the yard, you're going to be using 1/2 inch. So from this line, because I'm using a pre-made number 3 zipper, I'm going to be lining up my 3/8 inch marks on my ruler with the line on my fabric. Right, so everything is lined up, and then I'm going to draw a second, I just moved it. I'm going to draw a second line. So for the number 3 pre-made zippers, this separation between the two is 3/8 of an inch. If you're using zipper by the yard, this separation should be a 1/2 inch. I still need my ruler. Trying to put it away prematurely. All right, so I want to, so this is where we get to kind of play it by ear. We want to have our zipper up high enough that it is not in the way of our slip pocket. So if our slip pocket, and again, we're going to be using bigger seam allowances for the slip pocket to be able to shrink it down, so that way it's away from our seam allowances, it's away from this. So this will be a little bit smaller. So I just want to make sure that my zipper and my slip pocket aren't going to be right on top of each other, because I definitely don't want to put my zipper pocket too low, because if I put it too low, then potentially my slip pocket could cover it. Okay, so I'm lining it up with the top of my bag at 1.5 inches down. So I think that will be a nice placement for it. So I'm holding it in place, and then I'm going to take it and sew around the box all the way. grab your thing, and then we're going to fold this kind of semi in half. You don't want to crease it too hard, but I can feel the stitching on this side and this side, and I'm lining them up with each other, so that way when I make my snip is in the middle. And I don't need to make a very big one, I just need enough to be able to get my scissors in there. And then I'm going to cut down this side, and about quarter inch, maybe a little more, away from the edge. I'm going to stop, and then I'm going to pivot, and then I'm going to go towards my corners. You want to get as close into the corners as you possibly can without cutting your thread. If you do happen to cut your thread, no big deal. Just throw it back underneath the sewing machine and sew it around again. There we go. And then you're going to flip it to the other side, and you're going to do the exact same thing. Try to keep your cuts in the middle. If it's like one side's a little bit longer than the other, it's really not a big deal. And then again, go up into the corners. Okay, cool. Then take your ends, and you're going to push and finger press. Because these are cotton woven materials, you can iron them if you want to press them down. Especially once you get to your seam, you want to roll your edges of your pocket. So rolling, 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 get those seams a rolling. Sometimes they want to cooperate, sometimes they don't. My iron beeping at me, telling me, hey, I'm ready. Come use the iron. Nope, I'm lazy. You're too far away. It's literally at the table, like right over there. But I have to get up, walk all the way around. I'm good. I need to have a mini one over here by me. That would be the smart thing. But I don't. Maybe when I move my workroom. Alright, so you're just going around and you're trying to press your seams out as best as you can. If you need to help yourself hold them in place, throw a couple clips on there just to kind of help hold it. Oh my goodness. Sometimes when your lining is waterproof canvas, because it's a little bit thicker than the woven, doing this is actually easier when they're both cotton woven. It's like a little more tedious because they don't want to always cooperate. Jeez. Come on. Okay, once you get it done, you can finger press, go to the iron. If you have one of the little rolly tools, use one of the rolly tools, and you are just pressing this to make it look nice. Either grab your zipper by the yard or pre-made zipper. If you're using zipper by the yard, make sure you add your zipper pull to this, because nothing's worse than sewing it all down and realizing you forgot to put the zipper. Been there, done that. If you want to add some double-sided stick tape to this to assist you, you totally can. I am just kind of wing it. So I line it up. I don't want to put my metal tabs right where I'm going to sew, and so my zipper is long enough to where I don't have to worry about hitting that. So once I kind of get my zipper lined up, eyeballed in place, bring it on over, and then you're going to sew around at 1/8 of an inch. And make sure you don't back stitch, because you'll bring all of your threads to the back after once you're done. If you're using pre-made zipper tape like I am, or the number 3 zipper, make sure you stop before you turn the corner. You need to pull and put your zipper in the little box opening area that you just sewed around. And then you can turn your corner and then finish. And then you don't want to sew over the area that you started too far. You just want to go to meet it. Lift your thread, lift your needle, pull some threads out. We're going to flip it over, and then we're going to pull our threads to the back. So leaving this one down, I'm going to put a finger on it so that way I don't accidentally try to pull that one. I'm going to pull my thread, and then you get a loop down here at the bottom. So I'm going to try to bring it up for you to see. So when I pulled this thread, you can see that loop right there. That's the loop for the thread to the front. So now what I want to do is use something pointy well, I have my scissors close so I don't accidentally cut it. You want to go into that loop and then pull your thread that's in the front to the back. We're going to put a finger down on top of those ones. So hey, it's kind of like it's my reminder, hey, you already pulled and worked on these ones. You don't need to mess with them anymore. So I'm going to bring this up so you can watch the thread from the back come forward. So when I lift and pull this one, you see that loop right there? That's that's the loop from the front. So just slide your thing in. And then as you can see from the front, my thread is getting pulled to the back. And so now I have all 4 of my pieces, and now I'm going to tie these into a knot. I usually like to do a triple knot on these ones, just because I've noticed that when I do 2, it tends to want to slide itself out. When I do 3, it tends to want to stay. And so make sure you give it a nice pull. And then we're going to snip those. If you are using cotton thread on your domestic machine, just take a note that your threads will not melt. They will burn. The thread that is, or if you're using like an industrial machine, or depending on the thread you're using, if you're using like a polyblend kind of type of thread, that will melt and you get the little melt bead like that. And so there is our zipper pocket. And then from here, I'll trim those off once I finish adding on the back of my zipper pocket. So I'm using the little Spy Family piece. Gonna place those right on top, lining up my sides and the bottom. Gonna put a couple clips on there just to hold it in place. I'm good. All right, and then flip it over, and then you're gonna pull your lining piece out of the way. You definitely do not want to sew through your lining on this one. And you're gonna go around sewing this at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So that finishes that. I want to sew my slip pocket together, because I personally like to put my label on the inside underneath my zipper pocket. I might be able to put it up here, but there may not be enough room. So another option I could do is sew it onto my pocket right here. I could also sew it onto the back of my bag like I did on this one. So you can see it's centered up high. Normally I would do it low, but because this is here, and then I could do it up high, but it'd be kind of underneath there. So I went with the middle. Another option, because even though the design's here, you could put it up on the design here. You could put it on the bottom of the bag. There are lots of options and places that you could put your label. Ooh, do I have black one, or do I just have navy blue? I think I only have navy blue left. Need to make some more of these. Okay, so I can put my label centered here if I wanted to. I think I'm going to hold off and just wait till I kind of do a tentative placement, because I might be able to sneak it in between here and the top of the slip pocket. For the slip pocket, let's go ahead and put these right sides together. Add a couple clips just to kind of help hold it in place. All right, for the top and bottom, we definitely need to go big. So I'm going to be doing a 5/8 inch seam allowance on those guys. The sides, I'm doing a 3/8 inch seam allowance on the sides. And again, 5/8 on the top. And 3/8 down the side. Make sure you pause and then leave an opening. So I'm lifting my needle, pushing it down, leaving a gap, and again lining it back up with 3/8. And then finishing it off. It's definitely easier if you start on the end of the opening instead of what I did, but either way works. And then to your corners, clip your corners, snip your little jump thread. And then trim it down to about 1/4 inch. That's probably more like 1/8. So 1/8 would work. And then this opening, I'm gonna trim it down, but then when I get to the opening, I'm gonna curve outward. And then just like the other side, from the outward, I'm gonna curve to the in and then trim it off. So I leave the part where my opening is long. All right, so we have our opening piece right here. So then we're just gonna go ahead and turn this pocket out. I like to stick my thumb into the corner and then use my pointer finger to push the corner out. So then I kind of like, I'm pinching the fabric right there. And as I push it, I'm pushing downward and into the pocket, kind of like that. So that way I'm getting that corner. You can also, once I get this kind of turned out, I will use a kind of like a turning tool, or a turning tool to me, and what I use it for, to be able to really get the corners all poked out nice and pretty. My turning tool, aka mechanical pencil. So I have no lead sticking out, so I just stick it into the opening and then I just poke out my corners. So they're already pretty good turned out just by using my fingers. Not too bad. So then you just kind of roll. I like to clip as I roll just to kind of help hold everything in place. Again, because it is all cotton woven, you can take this over to your iron and give it a nice press. Make it look all nice and pretty. I just don't want to get up and then I'd have to walk through the minefield of dogs. Yeah, because right around me I have 4. Well, 5, but he's kind of tucked in the corner, so he's not really in the way. But if I got up, he'd get up, so then he'd be in my way. So 5. We'll go with 5. The other, well, one's out front, hanging out outside. And then the other 2, I don't know where they are. They're somewhere around here. So 8 corgis in total. So let's trim that. And I can move that. And then I got a big dog around here somewhere. I don't know where he is. Okay, so everything's pressed out. I just want to do a little test fit over the top. Oh yeah, that'll be perfect. So I'm definitely not in any of my seam allowances. I can probably go a tad lower. Can I fit that in there? Yeah. I'll probably end up putting my label right above my zipper. So I'm going to go ahead and top stitch the pocket. I'm sewing this at 1/8 of an inch, making sure it's back stitched at the beginning and the end. And then make sure you pull your rest of your pocket up and out of the way because you don't accidentally sew over that. So I'm going to just use my ruler just to make sure my bottom. Okay, so my bottom is an inch. My bottom of my slip pocket is 1 inch up from the bottom, and then 5/8. 3/4. It's a tad off, but it's not enough to make me worry. All right, and then I just go sew around this at 1/8 of an inch.
Make sure back stitch at the beginning and the end.
All right, so we got our zipper pocket and our slip pocket. So I can actually trim these off. Not the zipper pocket's done. Making sure you don't accidentally cut your pocket or your lining. And then just because, I'm gonna kind of heat the ends. Because why not? Right, now for my label. I don't want to go right where that is because then it'd be harder to get my zipper, the top of my zipper out of the way. So I'm going to go a little above. Make sure that my top of my zipper pocket is up and out of the way. That looks good. Okay, got my label on. Zipper pocket, slip pocket, looks good. I need to grab my back piece. So what I want to do now is then lay my lining up against, so wrong sides are together, and I'm lining up my top, lining up my bottom, and then because my inside doesn't have as much stuff to kind of get in the way to lay flat, I'm going to lay my lining part down, add some clips around, and then your corner of your pocket will more than likely be caught into your seam allowance. If you're worried about that adding more bulk to your seam allowance, I should have prefaced this at the beginning. I do apologize when I was doing that. If you're worried about this pocket, instead of doing 6 inches, do 5 or 5.5, and then you can you can cut this down here. Instead of sewing it into a corner, you can sew straight at an angle there, so that way it cuts the corner out of your seam allowance on either side. So that would just help reduce bulk if you're doing a domestic machine and you're worried about your machine getting through everything. One bad part of having the straps attached, they're always in the way. Okay, now I'm going to lengthen my stitch, and I'm going to just sew around at 1/8 of an inch. Okay, once you got the back and your lining all basted together, go ahead and trim off your excess lining and anything that's sticking over the edge of your exterior. So that includes this little bit of the D-ring tab right over here, Okay, so that finishes off the back panel of your bag. So we can set that aside. Now you're gonna reach for your other lining piece that you haven't done yet. And then the front of your bag. And then we're gonna try to tuck our ears down. So this one is gonna be a little bit more interesting to sew on because of the ears, but it will all be okay. So if you wanted to mark the centers of your top of your lining fabric for the exterior, you can do so. I just kind of lined up the top in general, and then there we go. And just kind of lining up the sides, just making sure that everything's on there or together and nothing, the lining's already a little bigger. So looks good. So I'm going to do it from the top with the lining facing down again. And then again, 1/8 of an inch all the way around. When you get to your ears, you're just going to kind of bend them over and all the way around as you go. All right, so that's our lining. And so the front is all done, so we can technically set that aside. All right, let's work on our zipper. So we need our zipper lining and zipper exterior. Gonna grab our zipper tape. So I just measure, I'm gonna melt the ends, or one end. I measure my zipper by my zipper gusset, and I do mine just like a tiny bit longer than the gusset. And then cut my other end. And then I'm not going to be adding my zipper pulls right now. I'm going to wait till I have this part done before I attach it to the regular gusset. So I'm finding the middle of only one side of my zipper gusset just to be able to line up with my zipper tape. So I'm folding my zipper in half, and then I'm taking, instead of making a little snip, I'm just going to be using a marking pen and marking my center. Then I'm going to take one of my marks, line it up with the little snip that I made. Add a clip there, and then clip along the side. So an option is you can go ahead and base this down at 1/8 of an inch and then grab your lining, and so then you're going to be right side of your vinyl is up, right side of your fabric together. So then so the zipper is in the middle. So again, you can baste your zipper to your exterior vinyl together first at 1/8 of an inch, or you can skip that and then just add your zipper lining or zipper gusset lining. So just do one clip at a time, making sure that nothing slips, holding your materials together. All right, so there we go. And then you're going to sew all 3 pieces together at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Making sure I put my stitch length back down. Okay, you're going to grab your 2 pieces, and then you're going to put your lining to the back, and then you're just gonna kind of hold this side. I'm holding my zipper, and then I'm just kind of pulling them apart. I'm not pulling too hard, because if you pull too hard, you can cause your zipper to go a little wavy. So I'm just kind of pressing just enough, or pulling them apart just enough. You can add some clips to help hold them in place. And I'm also pinching with my thumb and my fingers behind here, and I'm pinching this part right here to help it lay flat. So lots of things happening all at one time. And if your lining fabric is longer than your gusset there, or even up here, not a big deal, because we can always trim that off. And then we're going to stitch down right here. We're going to top stitch along this right here at 1/8 of an inch. If you wanted to, you can switch your top thread to be this like pinky coral color, or blush color to match, or just do black. So I just did black on mine, so you can see the black here. It doesn't look bad, but you could also have it blend in. I do not have this particular color, so I'm just gonna keep it with black. Make it easy. Okay, now that we got that top stitched and we're ready to add our zipper pulls. So I'm using 2. So I'm going to do 1 from each direction. If you were only doing 1 zipper pull, this is where you get to think and decide which direction. If I'm facing the front of the bag, do I want it to open from left to right, or right to left? If you want it to open from left to right by looking at the front of your bag, you need to put it in on the right side if you're looking at the back. So when I lay it flat, it'll be this side. If you want to have it open from the right to the left, you enter on this side. But since I'm doing 2, doesn't matter. But if you're putting your zippers on, if you do not have the fancy zipper jigs, which I do not, take a note of how your zipper teeth look prior to you pulling them apart. So then you pull them apart. And it's always easier if there's a little bit. If you only have like a tiny bit, it's a little bit harder. If you open it up a little bit more, you can kind of get them to bend a little bit. So I am taking, this is how I hold my zipper pulls. I put in just a little bit of one side. Sometimes I do the left, sometimes I do the right, depending on what the angle is. And then I can angle it in, and then I put just a little bit of that side, so I only have a little bit of both. And let's see if the camera will focus in on the top. So I'm looking through the back of the zipper right here, and I am pushing up on the zipper tape, down on the zipper pulls, trying to get them to go in. Sometimes you might need to push a little bit more. Do I not have enough in there? Okay, let's try that again. All right, a little from each side, and then we're just pushing. All right, this one's wanting to give me trouble. Jeez, okay, that was a snuggy fit. So my teeth look the same as what I did before I pulled them apart. So they're gonna look good. And then now I get to do it to the other side. Hopefully this one doesn't give me as much trouble. Okay. So on your zippers, see how that little bit of the coil is sticking out? You want to make sure you don't have any of those sticking out, because that can also make it a little bit harder in general to add your zipper pulls to them. So one side, add the other side. Oh yeah, this side was much easier. And so that looks good. And a lot of times, even if you're slightly off, if you're using dual poles, once you bring them together, wow, what is up with this one? This one doesn't, jeez. Okay, so I took the zipper pull that I put in on this side. That was really easy. I switched it over and put it in on this side. Easy. So there's something, because sometimes when you get them from the manufacturer, you just get one zipper. Every once in a while I'll get a zipper. It doesn't matter who it's from. It can happen from anybody. Sometimes you just get those few zipper pulls that are just super stubborn and don't want to go on. Which clearly is this one, because this one went on easy on both sides. This pull, I think I might be just doing a single pull. Because if it doesn't want to go on, if it doesn't slide very well, holy moly. Jeez. Yeah, that does not want to slide very well. So I will not be using that zipper pull. So let's, all right. So I want it to open from left to right. So I'm going to put it in on this side. Make sure, and I'm pushing through. See how easy this one was? Like that one just, I don't know. There's something wrong with that one. Okay. Okay, once you get your zipper pull on, we're gonna grab our gusset pieces. And then this one, because it's a decorative one, it's completely up to you how you'd like your decorativeness to go. On this, my first one, I put more of the bigger swoopiness to the back and then the little pieces to the front. If you want to do it to where it's like that, it's completely your preference on what you want to do. If you want the swoopies to the back, make sure you line up like so. If you want your swoopies to the front, line up like so. So I'm going to do big swoopies to the back. So I'm going to line up like this. Lining those guys up. Trying to center my gusset onto my zipper gusset. Clips are kind of getting in my way a little bit. There we go, and I don't have anything else fighting me. And then you can go ahead, and I like to baste this one down. I'll do it first at 1/8 of an inch, just to help hold everything in place. Then grab your lining, and we're gonna put the lining right side with the lining side. And then you wanna make sure that so I don't wanna put it like this because then they're in opposite directions. So make sure that you are putting them the correct ways. So now the eyes things look like they're going the same direction. Ooh, I don't even know if I did that on my other one. I have to go check real quick. Did I mess that up? Nope, they're the same way. Okay, cool. Whew, I probably caught myself on that one. All right, and then we're gonna sew this together at 1/4 inch seam allowance. And this is where it's important that at the beginning that you made sure to trim off your lining gusset extra. If you didn't do it at the beginning, it's not a big deal. So the one side is done. I'm gonna kind of lay it out. I'm just gonna throw a clip on there because I want to double check mine. So mine's a skosh off, so I will go ahead and trim that again. So if you didn't trim that at the beginning, now is your time to trim before you sew it. Otherwise you'll end up like me and have a baggy little lining gusset. All right, we're going to then grab our correct right side. That side is longer, so that. All right, now we can line up our edges, centering the gusset. I'm going to space that on at 1/8 of an inch. And then again, grab your lining, line up the top. And then also you want to go side to side so my exterior sticks over just a little bit. So I want to make sure that I'm lining up the exterior and the lining piece together and also along the top. And sew those together at 1/4 inch seam allowance. This next part is completely optional if you want to or not. You can pull the lining and the gusset together and then kind of pinch them. So we're making a giant circle. So we're pinching these together. You can sew across right here at 1/8 of an inch right across there if you want to. I did not do that. I just thought about it. You could technically, instead of making this a backpack or a sling bag, if you wanted to, you could technically rock this as a crossbody too, because how cute would this be as a little crossbody? So instead of putting the D-rings over here on the sides, you could put them in right here, and then you could add like a little rivet right here to be able to help hold the D-rings in place. Or if you have a domestic, instead of using the pebbled vinyl, if you use cotton woven, you could put them there and then have your crossbody strap and then wear this as a crossbody if you wanted to. So lots of options. So you have traditional backpack like I'm doing right now. You have the sling style with dual sides. You could do the sling like the strap like the instructions. You could do it like this where it's actually permanently attached up here, or the crossbody. Good options. So sewing along this it is optional. I'm just going to line up my edges, put some clips on. And then go ahead and lengthen your stitch. And then we're going to baste your lining and your exterior together. And then on this side, because we have our zipper, we don't need to baste there. So we're just going to start here. And then go to the other side. And at this point, this is where I'm going to then match up my gussets where they come together. I like to put a little clip on there just to hold that in place. And then to the top, this is where I will add that little snip. If I put my snip on this side of my exterior when I was putting the zipper on, then I would already have one there. And if they didn't line up, then as you're going, you're like, which one do I follow? And then it gets a little confusing. And so to avoid confusion, I just wait to add my center notch on this side until this point. So then make sure you line up the other side. And because we don't need to put a notch at the top, I'm just going to verify. Yep, because I did put a mark on the zipper. I could have waited to do that. But my mark is still in my center, so yay. And then I'm going to add my little notch at the bottom. And I like to start with the front because that's the one that you're going to see the absolute most of. And when trying to add binding and get the bags in there, sometimes weird things happen. And I want to make sure my front looks the prettiest. Oh, I never trimmed. Or if I did trim, I totally missed this. So I'm going to trim this real quick because I totally spaced on it. So like I was saying, I want this to look the best. So I want to give myself the best option. So without having to have the back on there, this gives me the most maneuverability. So I like to start with the front. I'm going to move my zipper out of the middle. Then I'm going to find, oh, I never did. Oops. I keep finding all the things I keep forgetting to have done. So I'm lining up my bottom, my exterior. So I guess I should have done this part earlier. Would have been easier, but oh well. Lining up the curve the best I can, and then my top. Then because the exterior is on the inside of my little gusset loop, and so I want the exterior to face the inside, so then when I look at it I see lining, it's all the linings, because that's where we will add our binding. Line your notch up with your mark on your zipper tape. That will be your top center. I like to add a couple clips there just to make sure to really hold it in place, and then go and line up my bottom notches. And then at this point, it's just a matter of working the curves. So if you want to start at the top, you can start at the top, start at the bottom, or then work up. It is all good. It's your personal preference. Ooh. These ears are gonna be fun. No, they're a little tricky, but they're not. It's not horrible. So I'm just kind of trying to bend and push the ears out of the way as I line up my zipper tape with the exterior, getting everything lined up. Sorry, I kind of dropped out of the frame there. Now you're just working your curve. If you have to, you can add little snips in your within your like basting stitches, because you don't want to have too big, because you're only stitching this at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So you can't have too big of snips, otherwise you'll see them. And then that will help relax your material to help get it into that curve. If you need to add staples, you can add staples. Just make sure that where you're putting your staples is going to be right along that 1/8 of an inch stitch length. Well, yeah, you'll just have to be careful, because you're going to be basting this together at 1/8 of an inch. So then it's like, do I get it out of the way beforehand, or I don't know. Staples are fun, but I'm always afraid I'm going to run into them. All right, this one, because I have so much hanging off, I'm actually going to trim that away just to make it easier, because I don't want to accidentally miss catching the ear in my seam allowance because of that excess. Right, now my edges are even, so that'll make it easier to get to the curve and to get it all sewn together as well. You just take your time going around those ears, the curves, all the above. So I'm just pushing down on those ears. Just take your time. Clips are your friends. This is another reason to start with the front, especially on this one, just to be able to get through those ears. Because if you had the back on and then you're trying to, because you can squish your gusset to get underneath there. Imagine if you had that back on and it's going to hold you out. It's a lot harder to squish to get around the curves. I wouldn't say a lot harder, but it has a certain level of difficulty to it. Just makes it more a little tricky. So I think that will be my opening spot where I go to sew. And then, so go ahead and then slide this underneath. I'm going to be stitching this. I'm going to drop my stitch length back down. I'm going to be sewing this at a eighth of an inch seam allowance just to start, just to get everything held together. And then I will go in and with the binding do the larger seam allowance. So my hand over here, I have my thumb and my fingers are gripping, or not necessarily gripping, but are touching. So if this is the gusset, my fingers are like right there, right along the edge. They're right here. And then as I get to the corners, watch me as I help to curve my bag. That will help me get around in the corners. So you see me start to push here, and I want to angle. Let me zoom in. Hopefully my fingers won't get in the way. Sorry for the movement. Okay, my fingers hopefully won't be in the way. So I'm rotating my bag as I hit that curve. So I'm trying to get where I'm stitching to be flat. Because if you don't help your bag turn and get through that curve and lay flat, that's where you can get your puckers. So you want to just get in there, get your bag area, that part that you're working, and so you see me really bringing the top of my bag up, and I'm trying to get all this to lay flat. And then sometimes if your lining material or this part wants to push inward away from your gusset, sometimes you kind of have to let it. I know that sounds really weird and you shouldn't, and you're like, no, it has to stay lined up. Nope. Sometimes, see like how my right here, this piece right here versus my gusset, this is a little bit hanging over. Sometimes it's just going to hang over and all you have to do is trim it off. It's better to have it slightly slide over than to just try to force it to line up and then potentially have a bunch of puckers in your corners. Because like nothing's worse than getting all the way to your end and then you turn it and you're just like, ugh, there's a pucker. It totally makes your heart sink, which sucks. Been there. So I'm holding my bag, I'm getting closer to my corner. So I'm making sure, I'm trying to get my edge, my corner, the beginning part of my corner, I'm trying to get all that fabric. I want it to line up going into the corner. And so you can see I have a light like bend right there, but as I get to it, it starts to want to lay flat. And then I can pull that clip out, try to get it to line up. It's not going to want to line up perfectly. But again, it is okay. I'd rather have to trim that corner off a little bit than to have like a bunch of puckers. Whether that's like the absolute like, yes, you should do that and that totally works, I don't honestly know. It's something that I figured out while doing this and it works. Well, at least it works for me. And so again, everybody's different. Everybody's techniques are slightly different. Like just because it's something that I do, it may not work for you. That's why it's nice to have a bunch of different tutorials on how to make these bags and just bags in general or anything really. Because hopefully you find something from somebody that works for you and you understand. That's the most important part. And now I'm getting into the part where I'm at my ears. So just take your time getting through those curves around the ears. Okay, so, ooh, got a little wonky right here. But this is just the basting stitch, so it is okay. So I did get a little long here in my curve. This side, I still, yep, I got a little long in the curve. All right, let's turn it so then you guys can see what I'm talking about. Oh, yep, I totally missed it, so I will have to go back to that curve. And yep, I missed that curve too. Okay, so that's the one downside about having the curves, those pieces being long, is you can miss it. But if you miss it, not a big deal. All you have to do is go back in. All right, let's throw a clip in there. Hopefully I can get it to stay. All right, where did I miss this one? Oh, right here. Well, that one wasn't too bad of a miss. Okay, we'll try this again. Let's turn it and check it out. Okay, so I did catch it this time. It's not the most amazing catch in the entire world, but I'm doing my next row stitching at 1/4 inch, so I will make sure that I caught it. But I'm setting myself up for success because I don't have any potential puckers as I look through here. I don't see anything that could potentially cause me to get puckers, so that's the part that I do like. And then all I have to do is then trim off this part that was a little long. That way they are even. Let's check the top. I'm not going to worry about that because this is flimsy and it can push over. I'm going to snip this little piece right here. I just don't want these little loose or long threads from being cut and moved to be sticking out from the binding. So trim those guys off. All right, now to add our binding. The one nice thing about using like waterproof canvas is that if you have like a few short pieces instead of one long piece, you can use those short pieces and then just butt them up. You don't have to fold over the edge and then do anything like that. You don't have to. You can. You can just leave it like this and then overlap them and then just keep going. That's the one thing that I do like about using waterproof canvas. Then I can see this is the side I'm going to be stitching on. This is the side I can see. So I want to make sure to push my excess to the side I cannot see. So that way I'm making sure, okay, if that side has more than my front side and I'm catching my front, I will definitely be catching my back. Or the back. Yeah, you know what I mean. That's what I like about, that's why I like making my binding to be a little bit wider, is just so I make sure I know I'm catching that, because yeah. Been there, done that. I've missed my, I didn't catch my binding going around especially corners. Ugh. Missing a corner is like the worst, because then it's just like, oh, I have to go through that corner again, and I have a love-hate relationship with corners. But it is very doable. And then again, all you have to do is just trim off the excess. This zipper is going to be in a funky spot. Okay, hopefully you're in a better spot now. Yep, just cruise around, clip your binding on. And when I go to cut it, I don't want to just leave it right here at the edge. I like to overlap them a little bit. Oh, that's a nice long piece for another project. I have a drawer full of my longer waterproof binding scraps. They're very convenient to have. Okay, so they are overlapped, and even if like one side had a little bit like was sticking out, so like this side, you can see a little bit poking out right there. Not a big deal, because I'm going to go through, and after I'm done, I'm going to trim it all up, and you'd never know. Okay, so I'm going to push this underneath, and I am going at a quarter, well, it's a little bit, tiny bit larger than a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So for me, I like to go, let me zoom in so I can kind of show you guys. So right here, let's get some extra light going on so you can see. There we go. So my edge of my foot is right here. And so I have a tiny, 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 tiny bit of the binding visible from it. So it's like super small. So it is larger than a 1/4 inch, but it's not as big as the 3/8. I know that's kind of like a, not really giving you anything to work with, but if you want to just go at a 1/4 inch, go at a 1/4 inch. I just like to go to where it's a full quarter, a splash more, so I can see the edge of my binding right here along the edge of my foot right here. And then I'll zoom you guys back out. There we go. And then you're going to hold that stitch length through the whole thing. Hopefully, because sometimes corners are weird. And just like I did with my other one, or not my other one, with the first time going around doing my basting stitch, I am moving and manipulating my bag to help it rotate. So that way I keep this part flat as I get to it as I'm stitching up to. So that way it is laying flat and I don't have any puckers. And I'm feeling on the inside where my fingers are on the inside. So my fingers right there, I am poking my finger there. So it's, that finger is feeling for potential for puckers. So it's smoothing out that area before I get to it. And then if you get to a corner, pick your foot up, help rotate your foot or your bag underneath your foot. And that will also help to eliminate the puckers as well, because if you just keep it under your foot and you're forcing your fabric to turn underneath your foot, you can get stuff to bunch up and you can potentially get puckers that way. So if when you lift your foot, you're lifting the pressure while keeping your needle down, because your needle is helping to hold everything there, but lifting up so you're alleviating the pressure that your feet cause, and then you're not getting everything to bunch up right there. So the same thing as I'm going around this top curve, I'm also helping my bag to move. And if needed, I just lift my foot every so often to help alleviate the pressure so I can help rotate my bag a little bit more too. Well, that's one side done. Go ahead and then melt your ends if you're able to. And then I like to use my duckbill scissors. So these are duckbill scissors. They're also known as like applique scissors. I just like using these ones because they can get in really nicely, because these guys can be a little bulky. So it's a little harder to get in, because look how big that is versus that. So a little bit easier to get in and around the curves using this one. So then all I have to do, I like to start usually on the side where the beginning is. So then I start where that part is. If you are using like pre-made bias tape or binding, then you won't need to do this part. This is really truly only if you are using like a waterproof canvas or a waterproof kind of binding. And then you just go around trimming the inside and the other side as well. So this is what the binding looks like when it's all trimmed off. Oh, I didn't do a very good job trimming right there. But the inside looks really nice. It looks a lot better than just leaving it just big and floppy. So, well, that's one side's done. Yay! All right, now we get to add our back panel piece. So we already have our marks, center marks done. So I'm going to gather up all of my webbing. So if you were doing the strap where it's attached like this one is over here, then you'd have to like gather it all and stuff it on the inside. If you're doing the strap that is per the instructions, your strap wouldn't even be in there anyway, so no worries there. And then line up your top centers. Add a few clips just to help hold it all together. And then come down to the bottom. Line up your clips. And then just like we did on the front, all you're gonna do is then line up your edges of your bag with your gusset and then add your clips. Okay, the binding is all finished. Now it's the fun part of turning this thing out. right, so now we are all turned out. So you can have your ears facing forward like this. You can also kind of rotate it and pivot it to where they're now facing towards the back. Sometimes if they want to stay. Only downside of them facing to the back is that they can kind of impede the zipper. But it is all finished. Well, almost all finished. But the bag itself is finished and looks marvelous. All right, now we're going to add these slide adjusters. So I go up one side, down the other. So I have the bar in between. Come down to the D-ring. So I like to go from, so this would be the outside, this is the inside. I like to go from the outside in. And then just like the previous times, I go on this side of the bar, go up, move the bar out of the way, push it down. If I can get it, there we go. And then I pull the slack through, and pull the bottom out of the way. And I'm gonna actually heat seal that because I kind of got. And then I'm just going to stitch this, do a line. There's one. Now I get to do the exact same thing to the other one. All right, now I have a regular backpack option, and then I have a sling style option for the backs of these guys. And then our fronts, and then if I can, this one's a double pull. All right, they are all finished. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. I hope it's something, you guys learned something. If not, I still hope you guys enjoyed this. They are all finished. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. These bags are, again, the Mav Pack at 120%. The cut and sews are all done by K&A Customs Fabrics and Hardware. The hardware, so the zipper pulls, and then all of these are all done by K&A. I hope you guys, again, enjoyed this tutorial, and have a good one. Bye.